The entire game was completely turned upside down by Cameron. Jim Jones quietly left after the shocking release, leaving Chrissy frantically searching for explanations. Fans are in disbelief. The repercussions may be the most intense yet, and the streets are humming. Let's examine what actually transpired. Harlem's streets were bustling, but not for the typical reasons. It wasn't about a rap feud leaking onto the block, a new mixtape release, or even a fashion statement. The focus of this time's comments, side glances, and whispers was Cayman, a man who had made a reputation for himself beyond lyrical ability and flair, but also on his boldness in speaking what others would not. Additionally, everything Cayman chose to release into the public was explosive and never merely rumors. His leak this time wasn't merely a lighthearted remark about the sector. It was individual. It was cruel. It caused so much harm to Chrissy Lamon's reality that Jim Jones was unable to ignore it. The industry was rocked by what Cameron disclosed. The rapper from Harlem, who is renowned for his cold delivery and the legacy of renowned diplomats, had always been ambiguous in connection to Jim Jones. Together, they had created an empire, but over the years, as they attempted to mend the wounds, they saw it fall apart due to egos, financial conflicts, and loyalty concerns. Thus, it wasn't a random move when Cam revealed his bombshell leak. It was calculated. It was similar to opening an open wound. There was more to the leak than a cryptic Instagram live comment or a diss track. Cam came forward with real proof, recordings, and video receipts that brought Chrissy into the public eye in the most negative way imaginable. According to reports, the video revealed Chrissy in intimate settings, which ran counter to the persona she had strove to project on Love and Hip Hop. Chrissy had been for years. This powerful jerk is standing next to Jim, battling for their connection, for her own independence, and for his mother, Mama Jones, to appreciate her. However, the information that was made public revealed a different picture, one in which Chrissy was the one with secrets rather than the victim. The internet took off right away. Fans who had spent more than 10 years following Jim and Chrissy's story were taken aback. In a matter of hours, memes began to spread. The comment sections on Instagram became full-fledged battlegrounds, and gossip bloggers had a field day. There was mayhem between Team Chrissy, Team Jim, and Team Kemet. Some individuals sympathized with Chrissy, claiming that Cam had gone too far and broken the bro code by making his private affairs public. Some contended that Chrissy had it coming and that she had engaged in risky behavior while in the spotlight. Too long. Karma had now at last caught up. However, Chrissy wasn't the one who was struck the hardest. Jim Jones was the one. Jim had stood up for Chrissy against the world for years. He was standing by her after their relationship was openly condemned by Mama Jones. He had made an effort to strike a balance between his devotion to his girlfriend and his Dipet brothers. In order to demonstrate that Chrissy was his rock and ride door, he had given up friendships and economic prospects. However, Jim was now in the worst situation of his life due to Cam's disclosure. In addition to his brother-in-arms revealing his lady, the whole business was observing his reaction. Even if the evidence appeared to be unfavorable, would he defend Chrissy once again, or would he eventually leave the connection that he had so desperately tried to keep? It was chaotic behind the scenes. According to others close to the marriage, there was a lot of conflict at Jim and Chrissy's house. According to reports, Chrissy sobbed as she insisted that Cam's leak was unrelated, inflated, or even made up. She pleaded with Jim to spare what they had created from Cayman's resentment. This time, however, Jim was not readily persuaded. He had been in circumstances for years when his devotion to Chrissy cost him relationships with other people. Now watching Cam use their personal lives as a weapon, Jim couldn't get rid of the thought that perhaps, just possibly, he had been humiliated by his long-term spouse. Cameron, meanwhile, remained composed. He made jokes, left subtle messages, and made references on social media that if somebody attempted to approach him from the side, he would have even more to reveal. Cam was always like that. Never give in, never be weak, and never allow anyone to dictate the story. The reason he initially leaked the information was a topic of much discussion among fans. Was it retaliation for past grievances? Was it because Jim and Cam had attempted to get back together but had drifted apart again? Or was it just Cam being Cam, who thrives on controversy and mayhem? However, the effect was indisputable. It was impossible for Jim Jones to go outside without hearing murmurs. Regarding Chrissy, the mood changed even at industry gatherings. He was now seen as Harlem royalty by those who had previously viewed him as such. His pride was damaged, and Jim wasn't the type of man who asks, "Yo, is what Cam said true?" to tolerate disrespect, particularly when it's in public. When the cameras weren't filming, Jim and Chrissy's tension reached a breaking point. Long silences became icy distance, and arguments became long silences. According to reports, Jim began spending more nights away from home, taking care of old acquaintances, and wondering if the woman he had dedicated almost 20 years of his life to was truly worth the turmoil. Chrissy felt deceived, not only by Cameron, but also by Jim's hesitancy. She had battled to demonstrate her allegiance for years. Everything appeared to be undone with a single spill. Admirers who had grown up with hip-hop and love couldn't believe what they were witnessing. This was no longer merely a drama on reality TV. It was unvarnished, unadulterated existence. Chrissy had always hoped for a happily ever after with Jim, complete with marriage. For the first time, however, Jim didn't simply argue back. Instead, he left, making that fantasy appear even more improbable. That's what insiders said. Anyway, Jim allegedly left their house for a few days following the leak and didn't return Chrissy's calls. In times like this, silence was more powerful than words. And the guy who had previously stood up for her in front of his mother, his friends, and the whole hip-hop industry was suddenly silent. The disclosure had accomplished more than just tarnishing the already shaky basis of a partnership. The relationship between Jim and Chrissy is now irreparable, but the one between Jim and Cam was irreparable. Fans wondered if this was the last straw for Chrissy and Jim, while the industry in Harlem watched. Oh, or would they somehow start over the way they always had? It was obvious, Cameron's startling disclosure was more than simply a story. It was a pivotal moment, a time when pride, devotion, and affection collided in the most conspicuous manner imaginable. The world realized that this drama was far from done. As Jim Jones left, Harlem was mistaken if they believed that Cayman's leak was the storm's climax. The drama was just getting started. The leak was the first part of this story, itself, unavoidable and impolite. Part 2, however, dealt with the fallout, the reactions, and the aftermath that extended well beyond Jim, Chrissy, and Cam. Three persons was no longer the only issue here. It turned into a show, a headline that attracted the attention of Mama Jones. Peers in the industry, and for more than 10 years, Jim and Chrissy's story had captivated millions of followers. Mama Jones caused the initial reverberation. She had never been Chrissy's biggest fan, as anyone who had seen Love and Hip Hop could tell. Mama Jones felt like Chrissy from the start was keeping her son under control, influencing him, and causing him to become estranged from his family. Mama Jones even released a diss track about Chrissy at one time, and their fights were legendary. Mama Jones didn't hold back when Cam revealed the secret. Mama Jones lost her mind on Instagram Live, although she didn't specifically mention Chrissy. It was clear from her statements who she was referring to. For years, some people have been donning masks. They love what comes with you, even though you believe they love you. The truth is always revealed, and don't cry when it does. Sweetie, fans immediately inundated the comments with new Mama Jones comments, smiling faces, and fire emojis. It was a dagger to Chrissy's chest. In addition to her private affairs being made public, her biggest detractor, the mother of her boyfriend, was suddenly praising her demise. Jim Jones, however, was unusually silent in public. Jim has a reputation for standing up for Chrissy no matter what for years. However, his silence was deafening after the leak. His next move was the subject of fan speculation. Would he return Cameron's clap? As usual, would he issue a statement defending Chrissy? Or had he finally been so broken by Cam that he no longer had the strength to defend his relationship? Insiders said Jim was conflicted behind the scenes. He had a profound affection for Chrissy. She was more than simply a romantic partner. He had established his life with her as a companion. She had kept him afloat during difficult financial times, at the highs and lows of his career, and when everyone else seemed to abandon him. However, in contrast, Heckle didn't ignore what the world had seen from Cam. It was no longer important whether it was entirely factual, twisted, or exaggerated. The damage was already done. Public humiliation has now entangled Jim's reputation, pride, and image as Harlem's capo. Humiliated in public. Humiliation. Cameron was a master at portraying the antagonist. Cam always added cryptic captions, laughing emojis, or lines that seemed to jab at Jim's manhood whenever blogs wrote about the subject. "Don't be upset with," he said under one of his popular posts. "Me, I ain't doing it. I just hit play." While some applauded Cam for going too far, others said fans ate it up. Even those not on Team Chrissy acknowledged that certain, particularly when they have the potential to ruin families, things shouldn't be broadcast. Eventually, the strain spread to business circles. Jim appeared to be exhausted during a recent event in New York. Witnesses said he wasn't the gregarious person he usually was. He avoided interviews, stayed out of the spotlight, and hardly smiled. Jim usually flourished in the limelight, but now he appeared to be a man burdened by treachery. There were even rumors that Jim left mid-con when someone attempted to mention K's name. Dialogue. The humiliation was even more painful for Chrissy. Every moment of Cam's leak was examined by blogs, making her the hot subject for all the wrong reasons. She was unable to avoid the press. Chrissy got caught slipping. Jin's Lady Harlem romance is revealed by Cameron in flames. Even those who formerly admired her fortitude and tenacity in hip-hop and Love were now wondering if she had been involved at home all along. The arguments became more heated. Jim was accused by Chrissy of leaving her when she needed him. She thought he was giving Cron the upper hand and allowing his ex-boyfriend to control the course of their relationship. But Jim had a different perspective. Chrissy had left an opening because Cam even had something to spill, a gap that was currently being utilized to make him look bad in public. You have no idea what it's like to go outside and be met by blank stares from everyone. During one heated argument, Jim reportedly lost his temper. Chrissy had maintained her loyalty for years, so those statements were particularly hurtful. Even Jim now doubted it. Even producers of Hip Hop and Love were affected. Word got out that VH1 was rushing to choose whether or not to include this real-life issue in the upcoming season's plot. Drama is what reality TV is all about, and Cameron's leak was perfect. Jim, however, had no interest. According to others close to him, he didn't want anything to do with cameras at the time. There was no story in life. In front of millions, lying was a nightmare come true. However, fans were unable to stop speculating on Instagram and Twitter. There were heated arguments. Some blamed Cam, claiming that he took it out on Chrissy because he was resentful of old Dipset grudges. Chrissy was blamed by others who claimed that her past had finally come up with her. Furthermore, a startlingly high percentage placed the blame on Jim, claiming that he ought to have realized that neither Chrissy nor Cam were entirely trustworthy, the one subject on which everyone was in agreement. In the Jim and Chrissy story, this was the most dramatic chapter to date. On television, everyone had witnessed them quarrel, cry, split up, and reconcile, but this time felt different. The suffering wasn't merely a plot point this time, it was authentic. Additionally, Jim's quiet and his reluctance to immediately defend Chrissy gave many people the impression that the relationship might be coming to an end. The streets started to hum with rumors that Jim, relying on people outside of his relationship network and spending more time with former Dipset associates. After almost 20 years of ups and downs, some even muttered that Jim was thinking of severing all ties with Chrissy. He's worn out. According to one insider, he also made sacrifices. Too much for too long. The final straw was this leak. Chrissy, however, was not going to let go that lightly. She was still confident that she and Jim could overcome the embarrassment and strain. She had supported him during thick and thin, and she had no intention of letting Current be the cause of the breakup. "We've been through worse," she allegedly said to a pal. Was this the kind of betrayal that no couple could withstand by the end of the week, or had they truly experienced worse? It was obvious. Jim was getting farther away. K-Mane was relishing every moment of the mayhem he had let loose, and Chrissy's desperation was evident. There was division in Harlem. The internet was split. The sector was consuming popcorn while watching. The question that pervaded everything was straightforward yet cruel. Would Jim Jones eventually interrupt Chrissy, or would he support her through her humiliation once more? The solution was still unclear. However, one thing was for sure. It was not the end of the story. One thing was clear: by the time the dust settled around Cameron's leak, Jim Jones and Chrissy Lamon would never be the same. The pair that had previously once regarded as the epitome of hip-hop devotion, they were now in jeopardy. Their personal conflicts were publicized on all blogs, podcasts, and gossip sites, and the noise around Jim increased in volume while he remained mute. In private, Jim was battling feelings he had suppressed for years. He had sacrificed friendships, professional advancement, and occasionally even his pride for Chrissy's happiness for so long. However, Cayman had to confront a hard reality as a result of his disclosure. Perhaps loyalty on its own wasn't sufficient. Perhaps love, no matter how intense, couldn't endure when everyone was waiting for you to fail. Chrissy, however, was not going to concede defeat. She was aware of the harsh nature of the internet and that Cam had achieved a significant victory by smearing her name. Jim's silence was more painful than the leak, though. She had seen him stand up for her, protect her, and put everyone in their proper place for years. But this time she felt deserted. She no longer only battled Mama Jones, Cayman, and the press. She was battling the man she believed would be by her side no matter what. When Jim came home one evening, after being gone for days, it was the tipping point. As soon as he entered, Chrissy addressed him, her voice shaking with anger and grief. "After everything we've been through together, do you really think you can just leave me?" she made a demand. Jim shook his head and dropped his keys on the table, clearly fatigued. "It's not about leaving. It's about recognizing what is and is not real." Chrissy was more deeply hurt by those statements than by Cam's whole spill. She had been fighting for Jim's devotion for years. On Love and Hip Hop, she even proposed to him. Despite the ups and downs, she thought their love was However, Jim was now doubting the basis of their connection itself. Insiders said Jim had already been residing at a different location in Harlem, away from the mayhem, and there were rumors that he was thinking about moving out permanently. For Chrissy, this felt like a rerun of the past. Every time she believed marriage was imminent, they were ripped away by something. Cameron's leak, Mama Jones, or business conflicts. The hurt felt too deep to mend this time. In the meantime, Cam continued to fan the fires. He never specifically named Jim or Chrissy, but everyone understood who he was referring to, and his admirers encouraged him by calling him Killer Cam. The truth, he made fun of Jim's lack of conversation on Instagram Live, saying things like, "Funny how the loudest ones always go mute when the truth come out." Even Dipset fans were divided. Some believed Cam had betrayed the brotherhood by bringing Jim's personal life into the spotlight, while others said that Jim had chosen Chrissy over the crew years prior and that this was just karma. Some criticized him for ruining a relationship in order to settle old scores. Returning full circle. Whatever one's thoughts, one thing was certain. Cam had radically changed the story. All right, Jim and Chrissy were left to pick up the pieces, and Chrissy found the humiliation intolerable. According to friends, she stopped going out, avoiding public gatherings and cameras, and avoiding stares, whispers, and incessant questions. Every time her phone rang, she prepared herself for another headline, another blog article that would analyze her life. Jim, on the other hand, was processing things differently, and instead of moping over the rumors, he buried himself in the studio. Music had always been his therapy, and now, with her fiery personality that once demanded respect, she felt exposed, defenseless, and helpless. Those close to him stated that his new tracks held a rawness, a bitterness that hadn't been there before. He wasn't just rapping about the streets anymore. Despite everything falling apart around him, it was his escape, but his agony still showed through in the booth. Jim's final interview, in which he didn't specifically address Cam's leak, was a turning point in his rapping about loss, devotion, and betrayal. Sometimes the people you believe has your back are the ain't here to prove nothing to nobody, he said, referring to the same people who will insert the knife first. I'm here to keep my peace. Fans analyzed every word right away, wondering if he was referring to Cam. The interview was upsetting, and she had thought Jim would take the time to address Chrissy or Chrissy. The uncertainty kept the internet buzzing, but one thing was clear. Jim wasn't in a rush to mend the connection that previously defined him for Chrissy. He had the chance to defend her, to tell the world that their love was unshakable despite what Cam had revealed. But instead, he talked as if he was ready to go on, as if he had finally come to terms with the fact that certain chapters had to end, and the fallout kept coming. During another live stream, Mama Jones, who never wanted to back down, stated slyly that sometimes a mother just knows. She told supporters that she had always warned Jim about Chrissy, and now the truth was out in the open. Although fans chuckled, Chrissy felt the pain since, in addition to seeming foolish in front of the world, she had also given her worst critic the joy of being correct. Jim Jones had undoubtedly left, but not with a huge statement, not with a dramatic breakup scene, but with silence, distance, and an absence that was more powerful than words. Cam continued to thrive in the upheaval, and his withdrawal was the most obvious indicator yet that he was done for a guy who had previously gone to battle for his love. He had always been a master at controlling narratives, and this time he had cemented himself as the ultimate puppet master in a drama that had Harlem and fire. His followers increased, his streams surged, and his name once again dominated headlines. The tale wasn't about entertainment, Chrissy. It was about two people who had spent over 2 decades together, only to have it fall apart in front of millions of people. Jim struggled to let go, Chrissy fought to stay together, and ultimately, Cam's, as fans thought back on the story. Many couldn't help but question whether this was really the end. After all, Jim and Chrissy had survived innumerable battles before, but this time seemed different. The devastating leak had done more than damage the tie that previously made them inseparable. One thing was certain. Cameron's leak would go down as one of the most memorable events in hip-hop rumor history. This time, the wound wasn't just between them. It was between them and the entire world watching. It wasn't just about music, beef, or even old die-pet drama. As Jim Jones left, Harlem discovered a harsh reality. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who may hurt you the most. It was about love, loyalty, treachery, and the cost of living your life in the spotlight. If you thought this drama was it's only the beginning, wild, I promise. Be sure to click the subscribe button, activate the notification bell, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Which side are you on? Chrissy, Jim, or Cam? Don't forget to hit like on this video so that more can participate in the discussion. And stay tuned, as we have even more. You're about to receive some shocking updates.